What's up, guys, and welcome back to another Football Manager video. Now, thank you guys so much for the support on the first part of this series. It was absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate it. Got a lot of feedback as well from various different people, which really helps. Make sure if you're new to the channel, you drop me a sub and turn on notifications. There'll be plenty more. But here's to part 2 of 3, my top 10 favorite midfield players that I've signed on Football Manager 2022. Now, as I said with the defenders and as I said with the attackers, there's lots of different saves that some of these signings relate to. But to me, I'm going to talk about those saves as I go along for the relative players. Also, as you can see at the bottom of my face cam as well, I got a new microphone. So hopefully the sound quality is just as good, if not better, than the one I had before. But yeah, let's get straight into the video. So the first player on this list is Javier. How do I pronounce his surname? Galga. I'm going to go with that. Most of you guys know him. He's quite an OP signing. He's very well rounded. He's cheap. He's got quite a few years left on him. So there are a lot of positives to him. Now, you look at his stats and think 12, 14s, 15s, every one of those positions. All right, he's not rapid, but you know, in a two-man midfield, in a pivot, he could be brilliant. The downside to him, and the reason why he goes in at number 10, is because his ceiling is very, very low, in my opinion, based on the experience I've had using him. I don't feel like he progresses to that level you would want him to. You know, £25 million player, you want someone who has the potential to grow into a world beater or world-class player, and I don't think he's got that. So if you can get him on a free, you can get him on a cheap, great squad player. He'll help bridge that gap between sort of mid-table and challenging for top 4, challenging Champions League, challenging for your league, whatever. But he hasn't, for me, got quite enough of a ceiling to get into that next gap. So for me, he's in at number 10. In at number 9 is Ruben Neves. Now, I love Ruben Neves on Football Manager. He's one of my favourite players to manage. I had him at Napoli last year on a save I did with a friend. I've had him on 1 or 2 saves this year. He's incredible when you have him. That deep line playmaker role, the ability to ping the passes. He sits deep. He wins the ball back well. The downsides to Ruben Neves, and the reason why he's not up there as one of the world-class 10 out of 10, definitely I'd sign him every save. He's extortionate. And I believe you can get better midfielders to do better, just as good of a job, or just below a job that proportionally, in terms of how much you pay, is better value for money. So that's why I don't sign him very often, and why I probably wouldn't recommend you to sign him, if I'm honest. Also, his physical stats, you know, his balance and his natural fitness being the only ones that are in the 14s, everything else is 13 or 11. For me, again, that's another reason why if you're going to spend 80, 90, 100 million pounds on a central midfield player, then you want someone who can last the whole game, basically. Also, if you are going to sign him, I'd recommend doing it if Wolves get relegated on your save. 100%, you'll be able to sell him on for profit, get him on the cheap. But as it goes, while they're in the Premier League, while they're challenging for European football, for me, I don't think he's worth it. But he's in there because he's one of my favourite players as I've signed. So on to number 8. Number 8 is Carlos Soler. Now, I had him on a Valencia save. A year, I signed one player that year. That was Ndika, as I said on the last episode. If you haven't seen that, therell be a link at the end. And I had him as one of my 2 midfielders. Now, a funny fact, the actual other midfielder is also on this list, but he was sensational. If you want a number 10, you want a shadow striker, he's perfect. He's got everything. He's not world class, but he's just that category below world class for me personally. And I think there's more than enough quality in him to be worth signing. He is on the expensive side, and I do feel like he does progress well if you're playing week in and week out. I just do feel like he moves up to where you'd want him to be. But I just think, again, he's one of those, he's such a fun player to have in your team. But I feel like you pay the price for having him rather than necessarily a cheaper option. But he's good fun. If you're doing a Spanish save or you're doing a save with a big team, 100% sign him. Other than that, maybe I think the money could be spent elsewhere. I feel like so far, most of the players on the bottom half of the list have not been value for money. We're going to get to some that are, so don't stress. On to the next one, and that's James Ward-Prowse. Now, for those of you guys that have played Football Manager for years, for those of you guys that have signed him, he's incredible, right? His vision, his passing, his creativity from deep, his long shots are brilliant. However, he costs an arm and a leg. Again, unless Southampton get relegated, unless his contract runs out, unless you're a big club, he's homegrown, which is great. His mental stats are outstanding. Some of his physical stats, all right, he's slightly on the slow side. But again, if you're a Man City, two-man midfield, dominating, creating loads of chances, then I think he's worth it. If I'm honest, I don't think I've had a save where Southampton have stayed in the Prem where I've signed James Ward-Prowse for anything less than 60, 70 million. So again, there are probably better options out there, but he's one of the most fun players to use, for sure. I feel like I'm whizzing through this list, but if I'm honest, so far, some of the midfielders I mentioned are just not worth the money. On to a player who I think was worth the money was Ross Barkley. Now, it was a controversial decision between me and a friend at the time. I got Luton Town promoted. I spent 10 years at Luton. I won the league in the 10th season. In the first year, I got Luton promoted in second. And when I took them up, I signed Ross Barkley because he's got good stats, exceptional stats in some areas and good stats in others. He was young, he was English, he was cheap. Chelsea were willing to let him go on a minimal because he had a year left on his contract. I think I signed him for 5 or 6 million. But at the time, he came in on 185 grand a week. Now, for a team who'd just been promoted, that caused a bit of friction between me and a mate. He said he wasn't going to be worth it. I said he was. And in the end, Ross Barkley kept me up in the first season and continued to be a captain and a consistent player throughout my save up until about the 4th season. And that's where I let him leave on a free contract. His stats had declined. His mental and his physical stats were deteriorating. And, you know, he wasn't a viable option for me. But if you're a championship club, you've just got them up or you're fighting to drag them up, you've got a bit of money spare, try and get him in on loan because I absolutely loved using him. I thought his output in terms of goals, assists, key passes was brilliant. His work rate was great as well. You know, even though his work rate's only 11 on there, you wouldn't be able to tell that. For me personally, he was just a whole different level. And I think if you're looking to bring in a player who's going to bridge that gap between the Championship and the Premier League, then look no further than Ross Barkley. £10 million or a loan deal with an option to buy, or at the end of his contract, maybe if you're happy to wait another 2 seasons, a year, so in real life. The coming Football Manager, definitely, I think, get him in if you're a championship club, get him in on a pre-contract, and you'll absolutely love him. But yeah, that's my number 5. Into the next one, and that's a Lima Reba. Now, that is the other half of the 2-man midfield I had at Valencia. I love a Lima Reba, right? Now, I'm going to let you into a little story about a Lima Reba. So, I was playing Football Manager last year with a friend of mine. We did an Arsenal Spurs save over 10 years. And while he was at Arsenal, he scouted a Lima Reba, signed him for something like 25, 30 million. He'll probably correct me on that price, but I'd imagine it was around that. Lima Reba went on to arguably be one of the best midfielders in the world under his training, under his management. He was just incredible. And even when I went to Barcelona in the final season of the save in year 10, I couldn't convince Lima Reba to come back. I absolutely love him. Obviously, he's at Leipzig in real life. He's worth an absolute crap ton. For me, he's always worked out as value for money on any saves I've signed him on. Obviously, if you're a small club, don't go after him. But other than that, I'd say he's a fantastic player. He's one of my most favourite players to use. Had so much fun playing with him. But again, it is like all the players that I've said on the last video and so far on this video, it's retrospective to what club you are, how much money you've got, what positions you need, you know. So if you can get him in on loan, great. His value might decrease this year as well because Leipzig apparently have offered him out a few times. So you never know, you might be able to get him in for 20, 30 million. If you can, absolute steal. Get him in, get him playing every week, and you won't regret it. 100%, 10 out of 10 player. And as I say, one of those players I wish I'd been the one to discover last year on mine and my friend's save. But, you know, what a baller he was. Matteo Pasina is the next one. Now, funny, the same friend I've started an online save with. There's three of us, and we're doing an Italian save. And I actually managed to sign him to Roma from Atalanta, who my friend is managing at the moment on that save. And for me personally, I've loved him. I signed him with Leicester and I signed him with Leicester and signed him with Spurs this year. And I've loved using him. And he just came up on my scout report. I was scouting for midfields in Italy, well-rounded, brought him into Spurs for about £25 million. And he was just absolutely sensational. He's tall, he's strong. He's basically got all the right stats in all the right areas. For the price you're going to pay, I don't think you're going to find many better value for money midfielders on Football Manager than Matteo Pasina. I don't know how he plays in real life. I've never seen him play. But for me on Football Manager, it's an absolute go-to. I think if you're a Europa League or you're a just breaking into a Champions League level club, I don't think there's a midfielder I would recommend more to sign than Matteo Pasina. 10 out of 10. You can play in a double pivot. You can play in a two-man midfield if you're playing 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, like a basic bitch. You know, whatever system you're playing, if you're playing a narrow diamond, you can play the left centre mid, the right centre mid, you can play at the base. You can literally play him anywhere in midfield. I've not really played him as a 10, but again, for me, the base of the midfield, absolutely 10 out of 10. You're not going to find a better value for money player, in my opinion, than Matteo Pasina. On to the next one, and it is Geoffrey Kondogbia. Now, I love Geoffrey Kondogbia for years. I used to sign him on career mode. I had him on Southampton FIFA career mode back in 2015, I believe it was, and I loved him. And earlier this year, I was doing a save. I sold one of my squad players. I needed a budget option. He popped up on my scout report. I bid 11.5 million plus 2 million in add-ons if I got European football. It was accepted, signed him in. And I tell you something, do you know what? He's not going to be the most glamorous signing in the world. He's not going to be a signing where you sit there and say, damn, he's world class. Oh, he's a world beater. Oh, he's going to revolutionize my team. But you're looking for a squad player who's cheap, cheerful, can do a job. He's the one I'd go for. He's the only thing I will say for a squad player, his wage is quite high. But if you're a Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs, Inter Milan, AC Milan, Atletico Madrid, who he's already at, those kind of caliber clubs, and you're looking for a squad player in midfield who can play as a box to box, who can play as a holding midfielder, who can play as a ball winning midfielder. For me personally, you're going to get all of that from him for a cutthroat price. So he comes in at, I believe, my number 3. Yes, he does. I've got the list down there. I can't remember the order of everyone, but he comes in at my number 3. In at number 2 is a player I've actually trained to right wing back on the save that this is on at the moment, but it is Marcel Sabitzer. Now, I wanted Spurs to sign Sabitzer years and years ago when he first broke out at Leverkusen, at Leipzig, and then again before he went to Bayern. He is brilliant. He's got elite level stats in every department. He's going to cost you a lot and he's going to want to be a star player. But as you can see, I've trained him as a right wing back based on a conversation I had with a friend of mine on a Spurs live show the other day about how I believe, based on my experience in Football Manager, that we could train a box-to-box midfielder to be the perfect wing back, drifting into midfield as we attack and then dropping back as we defend. He was the example I used, so I thought, screw it, let me try him, let me train him and see how it goes. And he's been brilliant. He cost a lot. Don't get me wrong, he cost a lot. But for me, I think you're going to get value for money out of him. If you're looking, he's that player who will take you from a Europa League to a title challenger. And for me, he's worth every penny. I've loved using him this year. And if you're at a big club and you haven't used him yet, please, please, please use him. He can play absolutely anywhere you like. And he's been brilliant. On to number 1. And a player who is arguably, I would say, one of the most underrated players on Football Manager this year. And it is an Atletico Madrid, Argentinian, ex-Udinese centre midfielder. If you haven't guessed it already, it's Rodrigo De Paul. I absolutely love him on Football Manager. He is, without a shadow of a doubt, just sensational. He's got the quality of Sabitzer with the price of Pasina, maybe slightly more, but definitely cheaper than Sabitzer. I love him. He can play anywhere. You can play him as a 10. You can play him in defensive midfield. You can play him as a holding midfielder. You can play this guy anywhere in the midfield. He's versatile. I absolutely love him. You can see there on the map, he can play off the left as well. He's got the quality and the stats to do it. He's just brilliant. There's not a single stat anywhere that I would have an issue with. He's a perfect age, coming into his prime. I did a Glory Hunter save earlier this year, and I'll be looking to do a Glory Hunter save on YouTube, possibly for my first save of Football Manager 2023. I started out with Atletico Madrid. I won the league. I missed out on the league in the first season, but won the Champions League. He played an absolutely pivotal part. I'd never used him before, never looked at his stats before, never considered him before. Then that was right at the start of Football Manager 2022. I left to PSG, signed him to PSG, and again, he was a pivotal part of winning every trophy available in my first season. I left PSG, went to Manchester United, signed him again. Again, he was a pivotal part, and he followed me to every single one of the top 5 leagues, apart from one, which was Germany, where they already had the quality because I ended up as Bayern manager. They already had the quality, and I didn't need to sign him, and the money needed to be spent elsewhere. But for me, he was just outrageous. I cannot give praise enough for a player that I can give for him. Let me know what you think of this list. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I understand the first 5 maybe I said weren't value for money, but you can see by the second batch out of the 10 that there are a lot of value for money options. I understand that there aren't a lot of lower league options, but we're talking about the saves I've done this year, which have been Roma, Spurs, a Glory Hunter save, and various other top level clubs. So get him in your sign in. Let me know what you think. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe. In the description, there'll be a code to my Fantasy Premier League. I set it up the other day, and like an idiot, forgot to put Kane up front. When I built my team, we built it on stream the other day. In the link in the description, there'll also be a link to my Twitch. Make sure you go and follow that. I'm streaming a couple of times a week with a Bundesliga save with a friend of mine. So make sure you go and check it out. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.